You are in the right place if your students are growing, but not growing fast enough. And that's something that I hear a lot from educators is that they're growing, they're just not growing fast enough. What can we do to get them there? And that's what this time is about this morning. Right. So a little about me. If you don't know me, my name is Tony Hardy, and I am the lead educational consultant of a company named Intentional Change, where we focus on making sure that our kiddos understand the whys behind math. And so that's why I'm called the Math Wise Coach, because math wise, the whys behind everything is so important for our kids to be able to apply and to be able to learn what we need them to learn and to excel in mathematics. I've been a math coach for about 12 years, and I've collaborated with teachers and worked with instructional coaches, mentored them, and all of it was designed to help make isolated topics, to take isolated topics and connect those for students so that they make connections. And you'll hear me talking about that a lot through this entire masterclass, because it's so important that our kids are making those connections, because if they're not making the connections, all they're doing is pushing numbers. And that's what we do not want. We don't want them pushing numbers. So here's my why. I think I already told you a little bit about it, but these connections that we help our kids make, they change their lives. And I'm saying that because I think that we all, especially teachers, we were all taught math in a certain way. And the new ways that we're asking our kids to talk about math now, it kind of scares some people, teachers, parents. It scares a lot of us because we weren't taught that way. But when you go and you just really think about and think deeply about the math and the level of thinking that our kids are asked to explain now, it helps them to make those connections where they can apply. And that's what it's all about, is the application, is making our kids critical thinkers, taking the Band-Aids away from them, where we are only focusing on helping our kids be successful right now. That's not what we need to be doing. We need to make sure that our kids know how to solve problems. They need to know why they're solving those problems. And the way we do that is by helping them make those connections. So this is my why. So let's get to know each other. Place your name in the chat and your location so that I'll know who it is that I'm talking to. And so I think I'm on a bit of a delay. So if you don't get your name in there, that's okay. When I do see your information in there, then I will respond to you. I'm not sure why I always have a delay. I thought it was fine, but not this technology thing, y'all. Y'all know how it is. Okay. So if you had to think about an image, one of these images on the screen, which image would you use to describe your students' conceptual knowledge, their understanding of things? What would you use? What would you say? Would you say number one, thinking about why, or number two, and also kind of thinking about why? What do you think? Okay, so for me, I think with the kiddos that I've worked with in the past, because as an instructional coach, I've worked with kids who are the higher kids, I've worked with kids who are lower, and the ones who are in the middle. And there is something that all of them have in common, and that was that especially my middle to lower ones, and even some of the high ones, they had some cracks in their foundation. And because they had cracks in the foundation, my image would be number one, because on a cracked foundation, we know that the kids can't stand. Everything will crumble. Everything that they try to put on it will crumble. So what we want is to try to get our kids that foundation where that number two is where they need to be, where we want them to be. So this is our agenda today. We're going to look at what the data says, because, you know, I'm a data person. And we're going to also look at track. Track is a framework that I used with educators to help them to identify the areas of misconception and then align that instruction to help their kids. And then we're going to do a bit of a recap. So here's your guiding question. How can I address underlying misconceptions and grow or increase our student growth faster? So with all of that, we know that the whole goal is for our students to grow. I want my kids to be better because they came to me and I was their teacher. I want them to grow from that. And the way we do that is so important. So here is some data, some historical data that I pulled from the state of Texas, from the TEA website. Historically, we have had limited success accelerating students from below grade level to meets grade level. Now, this is based on the STAR test. Now, when I saw this, I was like, oh my goodness, this is something that I think people need to know more about, because historically, this is what this says, that students that did not meet grade level in 2017 in third grade, they don't catch up within the 2 grade levels. So by fifth grade, they don't catch up. And so here's the example that I have here. For kids who did not meet in 2017, the third grade test, third grade STAR, only 7% of those third graders who were below grade level met within 2 years. So that tells us a lot. That tells us a whole lot of our kids are being left behind. And so we have to figure out what it is that we need to do to help our kids, to get them to where they need to be. And this additional piece of information, additional evidence from after Hurricane Katrina. After 4 years of intervention, students impacted by Hurricane Katrina recovered to state averages in reading. They did not recover in math. Come on. And so that right there, I mean, to me, I'm thinking, okay, that's just unacceptable for me. That's just unacceptable that our kids are not making it in math. So they can read, but they just can't do any math. So we have to figure out what it is that we need to do to get our kids there. And we can do it together. And that's the thing, is that none of this is where a person goes into the classroom, closes the door, and thinks that they're going to make a big impact to this whole thing as a whole. That won't happen. We have people who are excellent teachers. They go into their classroom. If they don't share that information and we don't grow together, then it's like a weak link in the chain. If one of the links is weak, then we're all weak. And that's what's happening now. We're all weak because a few of us, a lot of our kids are weak in mathematics. And that's what this data says to me. So we know we have this process of how we review data, and this process, this process of how we review data, and we assess the data. We talk about analyzing, interpreting, and planning. But if we are not really looking at how we use that data specifically, and how we are intentionally using that data, then it's really it's not really useful to us. So we have to make our data useful. So this quote here really kind of stood out to me. I was online one day and I saw it and I was like, okay, we need that. The goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. So what you do by looking at your data, and then by taking that information that you get and then doing something with it, is what's going to move our kids. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first strategy that we're going to be looking at is how we respond to data. So by responding to data, we're looking at more than just pass or fail. So did the student pass this test or not pass the test? Well, yeah, they missed this question, that question, and that question. It's more than that. It's looking at the details and figuring out what it is that the kids missed in this specific problem. It's using that information after we figure out why they missed a problem to address misconceptions after that. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is how we appropriately respond to the data. So we're going to address misconceptions. So that means that there's no more pushing numbers without understanding. There are no more mnemonics where we are teaching kids like poems and tricks that have nothing to do with the mathematics. So for example, there's a mnemonic that I've heard of, and one of them was dead mice smell bad. Well, dead mice smell bad was a mnemonic for for division to help kids to remember the steps. And so remembering the steps is different than understanding the process and why things are happening. So those are the tricks that we sometimes focus on because we want our kids to be successful right now. But thinking about right now, yes, we have to think about that, but we also have to think about what's upcoming, the next school year and into college. We have to think about that. And so we want to make sure that we are doing more than memorizing, and we are using our conceptual knowledge over the memorization. That's where we get the most impact with our kids, and that's how we see the biggest growth from our students. So we're going to talk about division. All right, now division is one of my favorites because I know that it is so much rides on division. I mean, division is fractions. Divisions is everything, y'all. So my love is really connecting to what it is that the kids are missing and going right there and targeting that and addressing that need so that we don't keep having the same issues year after year after year, and our kids never get better. And then they become adults who hate math, and that's not what we want. So when we respond to data, I have a couple questions that we're going to be looking at. The data that we're looking at today is going to be from 4th and 5th grade. So this problem is a problem that I pulled from the STAR test this year, 2022 STAR from 4th grade. And this one is a 2022 5th grade question. So the things that we do with our kids right now in 3rd grade and 4th grade, even into 2nd grade, the things that we do right now build them to be successful on these two types of questions. So I'm just giving these to you just to kind of guide your thinking a little bit, because what we want is our kids to be successful in all grade levels after they have learned information from us, be able to apply it. Gives them the success and the confidence to do the mathematics. So here's a question for us. And again, this is a question that I pulled from STAR. This was a 2021 question, I believe it was. So here it is. So if you have your pencil, get your pencil out. And if you're watching this on replay, make sure that you put #replay in here so that I know that you're watching it on replay. And get your pencil out and do these problems and go through the thinking that we're going to be going through. Okay, so here we go. There are 1,150 baseball cards that will be sorted into bags. Each bag holds 5 baseball cards. How many bags are needed for all the baseball cards? So working through this problem, we see that our answer choices are A is 23, B is 230, C is 1,145, and D is 5,750. Okay, so I'm going to just give you just a little bit of time to work through this problem and get your answer. And then we're going to talk about what it is that our kids got. Okay, what did our kids get? All right, so here we go. So 12% of our kids got 23. There was a place value issue there. If you've done the problem, you can see that was a place value issue. And the correct answer was B, 230, 230 bags. And then C was 14%, where we have the kids that subtracted. And then D was 11%, where the kids multiplied. So our job is to figure out what the mistake is when we're doing these types of problems and figure out what we can do, thinking about that, what we can do to address those problems when we come to the end of this whole little section here. What can we do to address them? And that's always my mindset. What is it that I can do to help the kids through these problems? Always. It's like you're being a detective and figuring it all out. Okay, so here's the second one. This is the 4th grade. Again, a baker is making cakes. It takes 9 eggs to make each cake. The baker has 8 cartons of eggs, and each carton contains 12 eggs. What is the greatest number of cakes the baker can make using these eggs? See, this is a simple, that's a real life problem right there for kids, which is another issue, is making sure that our kids have contexts that make sense to them and they can visually see in their heads. What is the greatest number of cakes the baker can make using these eggs? F, 10, G, 11, H, 6, J, 13. All right, try that one, see what you think. And as you're doing these problems, go through it as you would a kid too. Whatever you think a kid's mistake would be, make sure that you write that down. That's valuable data for us. I'm always trying to collect data, all kinds. Okay, hope you got your answer. Okay, so 48% of the kids put F, which is 10. That's the greatest number. 70%, they put 11. They misinterpreted that remainder that was there. Then 15% misinterpreted the remainder or divided 72 by 12. So it could be either one of those, but you know what? I would bet it was misinterpreting remainder just based on the information that I've learned from our kids. And then 20% of them multiplied 12 and 9 and then divided by 8. Okay, so all of that should be framing something in your head, thinking about, okay, what is it that the kids are missing based on these types of problems? Okay, so here we go. The first question, it was a problem solving, interpreting remainder issue. We know that that was the issue, well, the second problem. We know that was the issue because we worked it out. We've had that frame, that thinking. We've had all of that. We know that that's the issue. Here's the first one, place value understandings. If the kids are misunderstanding place value, then they would have gotten A because they got 23. And so it's more than just attaching a 0 or just bringing down the 0. It's more than that. It's the thinking that's involved behind it. So we know here that the problem was interpretation of the word problem, which is problem solving. We know our kids struggle with word problems, okay? It's the gimme. And then place value understandings. Place value, it seems like the kids should get that. But the problem is that our kids are not understanding equivalence. And so when we are working through looking at expanded form and doing expanded notation, and we get into our fourth grade year, when we're doing all of those different forms of place value, the kids aren't really grasping that these values are equivalent to others. So if they make 20 can be made in different ways. All of our values, all of our whole numbers can be made by composing and decomposing them in different ways. They struggle with that, so they struggle with division. The problem solving, that's everywhere. I mean, it's problem solving with fractions, decimals, percents, all aspects of problem solving, they struggle with that. Reasoning through, why is it they're solving a problem in the way that they're solving it? Some kids can't explain it to you and really don't understand what the answer means in reference to the whole problem itself. Because what do? They grab numbers and they just start doing something where they can add them, subtract them, divide them. I've even seen kids who get a word problem and they add, subtract, multiply, divide, and then find the problem that's on the paper and say, oh, that's the one, because that's the only one that's there. No, ma'am, you need to be able to explain why that is and explain if it's correct and how you know it's correct. In applying that knowledge, our kids don't know how to apply the knowledge. So I see Jamila. Hey, Jamila, sometimes students don't understand the question because they can't relate to the information due to cultural differences, which is huge. We have to make sure that we give our kids, though, that the mathematics in a way that helps them to understand. A lot of our kids, they understand cooking, right? Because they cook with their parents or cook with their grandmother. I used to cook with my grandma. And that is also a part of their culture. But we have to give our students problems that meet their culture and help them to see the mathematics in their head. If they can't read a question and get a visual mental math image in their head, then they're not able to solve a problem. Because what we want them to do is to take their actions, match it to the mental math, and then match it to the operation that they see happening. And that's not happening with a lot of our kids. Okay, so after doing this, I just like to drop a few guiding questions after I've covered a concept. Is there anything you will tweak about the way you review your data? So with this, we want to make sure that we are clustering our problems together and figuring out what it is, the commonalities that we are seeing among the problems. Are the kids having any strengths? Are they having any areas that we know that we need to focus on? That's the whole idea of responding to the data. If we don't respond appropriately to the data, it's just like throwing a Band-Aid on everything, because we are focusing on what they're doing right now instead of that underlying issue, which will make a big difference in the long run. That's where we are with this. We have to make a difference. We have to do something different because our kids are not excelling. And this especially hits our economically disadvantaged students. So we have to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to get them there. So how do we align purposeful instruction? Well, we know what the issues are now. So now we have to intentionally figure out what it is that we're going to do to help our kids. What is it that we can do that meets the needs of all of the learners? Because honestly, y'all know how it is. We cannot focus on every single thing. And because we can't focus on every single thing, then we're going to focus on the thing that's going to give us the greatest impact. That's what we're going to do. And when we do that by looking at the underlying issues, it buys back time in the end. Because honestly, this is a long-term thing where you start a plan at the beginning of the year and you roll the plan all year and you tweak, roll it and tweak all year long. Because what it is, it's a marathon, and before long, your kids will be exactly where we want them to be, but we have to be intentional. So if we know that we have the place value that we're looking at, we have the problem solving, reasoning, applying knowledge, those are the misconceptions that our kids are having. So what can we do to figure that out? Hey, well, I'm going to teach a strategy here that is based on a division strategy, but it's also helping to frame place value. It's helping to frame and understand where division comes from. Okay, so here we go. We need to know if our kids if they need concrete objects, if our kids need representational, if they are able to make that bridge from the concrete to drawing things out. We need to know if they are at the abstract phase. Some of the kids are able to see it with abstract and make with concrete and then make that leap to the abstract. Some of them are. And that's completely fine. But our job is to figure out what do we do to get them there fastest. Making connections. Any strategies that we work on, anything that we do, we also have to be able to go back and say, hey, remember when we did place value? Place value helps you here. This is what it looks like. Invite students to engage by, again, doing those things, by giving them problems that ground them. What we don't want to keep doing is giving kids a problem where they don't even have to think about if they need to divide or not. Just a rote problem where it says, okay, divide these two numbers. That doesn't help our kids when it comes to these standardized tests, because a lot of our tests, most of our tests have a whole lot of words on them. And if we only practice with just calculation, then that's all the kids are going to be able to do is calculate. And so we want to make sure that we are taking that and giving and getting the most bang for the buck by doing them at the same time. Word problem with the calculation so that they get a visual image and they understand what it is and why they're doing it. This builds communities of problem solvers and critical thinkers. That's what we have to have. So this is a strategy that I'm starting. And so I want to talk you through this strategy because I've had some students that as an instructional coach, the love that I have for mathematics is because I wrote curriculum for kindergarten through 8th grade, math coach during that time. And the thing that I love is that I was able to create curriculum, things that I would go into the classroom, talking to teachers and see that the students were struggling with, and then come back and then write curriculum and then go in and work with the kids and talk to the teachers to see if those things are working. And so this is a strategy that I was given a book one day, and it had this model in it. And I was like, what in the world do I do with this model? I had no clue what to do with the model. So with the information that I saw that the kids were giving me, the data that they didn't understand the division, then we created this to help them this whole idea and this whole bridge to help them to get to division by using place value. So this strategy is called the place value model. And what I'm going to do is talk you through how to use this. And at the end, I'm going to drop it into the chat. And if you want a copy of it, feel free to download it. Okay, so here we go. These are the problems that we've already done. So we already know the answers. And so when we're working through these problems with kids, these are the things we want them to be able to tell us. First, that we have 1,150 baseballs. That's your dividend. So it's going to go here in that place there because that's the dividend. And then we're going to divide it by, and that's the total number of baseball cards that we are going to be dividing. And that's what they should see in their heads. And so then we're going to be dividing that among 5 cards, 5 bags. Okay, so the number of baseball cards held in each bag. Okay, so the number of baseball cards held in each bag. So it's not 5 bags. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to highlight that dividend. So highlighting 1,000, 100, 5 tens, 50, and 0 ones. Okay, so let's see if this takes care of the place value issue. So what we're doing is unpacking this by place value. So instead of asking the kids, how many times can 5 go into 1? I'm going to say, how many groups of 5 1,000s can I make? Well, looking at 1 1,000, I can't make a group of 5 1,000s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a trade, which pulls the place value issue in. I'm going to make a trade, and instead of having 1,000, I'm going to trade it for 10 100s. So I'm going to shade it in and cross out that 1,000, and here that goes. And so now the kids, when they do this strategy, they'll think that they have divided, and they haven't. And so they need to see that right now they've made a trade so they would have enough hundreds to divide or to circle groups of 5 100s. But the value here is still 1,100, which is an equivalent value to 1,100. Our kids struggle with that understanding that a number of value can be shown in different ways. This is a strategy that has been very successful with students that I've worked with. And this is something that they can do. So even if they don't know their multiplication facts, they can do these types of, this division. And it's been especially useful for we have some sped students who this really works for too. And so now we're able to make groups of 5 100s, and we were able to make 2 of those. And so it goes in the quotient. There you go. And so now we have this 100. So what happens to this 100? Well, so far we've divided out these 5 100s, and we have this 100, and then we have 50. So we have 150 cards that we still need to divide. And so with the language that you use is helping the students to see that these are cards, these are actual objects, not just pushing numbers. So it pulls in that understanding of problem solving and what it means when I am making a trade. And that's what this is. So now I'm going to trade 100, and I'm going to trade it for 10 tens. So there we go. That's a trade. The kids need to see it. They need to do it. They need to move the action. This can be done with place value discs to help them, especially for your special ed students. It helps. So now I'm able to circle the 3 groups of 5 tens for of these to show that I'm going to have 230 bags for all of the cards, and they need to know that these are the number of bags. But then why is that a 0 there? Well, it's a 0 there because they didn't have any more cards to divide. So they didn't have anything left. So there's a 0 there. They have to be able to justify their reasoning to tell you why it's true. This supports our place value understandings. So then when we are making it to the next one, where we are having to interpret remainders, the language that we use is critical to help the kids to see these problems. Okay, so we've already solved this problem. So basically we know that we're going to have to do some multiplication. Okay, and so we multiplied 8 times 12, and we got 96 to get the total number of eggs. They need to be able to tell you what it is that they divided and why. So 96 and we're dividing it by 5. It's the number of eggs to make each cake. So one cake, they know how many, with 9 eggs, they know how many cakes they can make. When kids are only pushing numbers, they can't tell you what it is they're doing. And so that's why some of the kids may have gotten 13 as an answer choice. Okay, so looking at this, we know that we're going to shade in our 9 10s and our 6 1s. So if we're doing this problem, we know that right there, we already know that we have made 10, sorry, we've made 10 of those cakes, okay? And so we have 6 eggs that are remaining. So if we're having this conversation all the way through where they know that what they're doing is dividing the eggs, then when they get to this last piece and they aren't making any circles and they can say, well, I have six eggs. Well, it takes 9 eggs to make a cake, so I can't even make a cake. And so the questioning that you ask them is important. So just giving them a problem and say, okay, they got that question right. No, asking the question, what other questions could I get from this? Okay, so how many eggs do I need? How many more eggs do I need to make a cake if I have 6 eggs now? Why can't I use 6? Why is that? So asking them so it goes deeper and increases the rigor of the question. And this guides them to 5th grade, which is again, place value when they get to decimals. And this right here, this problem hurts kids because if they're pushing numbers, then they have no clue when it's reasonable or not reasonable. That's our job to help them determine when it is. Okay, so this is what it would look like for that. And this is the place value model. So the thing that I do is helping kids and helping teachers to figure out what strategies, by watching a kid work, what strategies would help him most. Because, you know, we have so many. And kids gravitate to the one that they're most comfortable with. This place value understanding strategy is one that helps them with the conceptual understanding, but it's not very efficient, right? And I know it's probably what y'all are thinking, kids can't do this all the time. You're right, they can't do it all the time. But this gives them a foundation and a connection to be able to go to another model that's called the explicit trade model. Now, this is the same thing, same level of understanding, except for now, instead of writing all of our hundreds, 10s, and 1s right now, then we are only dealing with the numerals. And this guides and bridges directly to the standard algorithm. The standard algorithm, where we eventually want them to be, this is where they get it from, right here. This is the connection. So how and when do I teach these things? Well, we always have, first of all, our tier 1 instruction. But if our kids aren't getting it, we have to be able to say why they aren't getting it. What do we do to help them to get it? Well, we have to do it during reteach, intervention, stations, extension. For our kids who get it all the time, we can give them, if they can solve a problem using a standard algorithm, see if they can solve it in a different way. Use partial quotients. Any of those different strategies help. Because today I'm just giving you this one strategy, but there are others that also support that understanding that our kids need to have. So we have to give them access to these opportunities. So questioning all of those things, this is what our kids need. You have to strategically calendar your instruction. So thinking about where you are in your scope and sequence, if you know that you are going to be going into area and perimeter coming up, and you know that your kids need that support, then these are things, thinking strategically about where you place the instruction to give you the most impact, the most bang for the buck. That's how we grow our kids. So maybe it's, okay, I see that the kids are able to interpret the remainder because I know that maybe 63% of them got the answer correct, but then maybe another 15% of those were a little bit off. I know that basically that's a small squeak for me. And I can get them in small group and I can fix it like that. And so if I get them in small group, then I'm going to roll that into bell ringer the next week. And then I'm going to roll that into a station the following week. And I'm going to do it in a way that is going to help me when I get to the multiplication and division in perimeter and area. Okay. That right there is working smart and making connections within concepts for our students. That addresses underlying misconceptions that's going to help you later and buys you time. And the way we do that is by making sure that the rigor is there and that our language is appropriate so that our kids get it. So this is a document that I like to use. This is called the performance level descriptors. This tells you what it is that the state of Texas says the kids need to be able to do to meet grade level. And and I don't think that we as educators need a document that tells us that our kids need to be able to do problems at a higher level of rigor. They need to be able to think and reason and justify and apply their knowledge, solve and explain. We don't need a document to tell us that, but I use this because I'm one of those people who has to have something that grounds me and it helps me to guide my thinking. This document tells you that. It tells you that our kids have to be able to do these things to be successful at the next grade level. And as long as we aren't addressing those misconceptions, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. And we're going to keep getting kids that come to us that have these gaps that we're trying to fill and never get them filled. When I was working with kids, and knowing that I had a kid that was so far behind, I'm focusing in on his growth. I'm knowing that he's probably not going to make it this year, but you know what? He's going to be so close when he gets out of my class that next year, if his teacher continues with identifying those misconceptions and addressing his needs, then he can make it by the end of the second year. But it has to be an intentional effort where you are focusing on not giving Band-Aids, not focusing on tricks, but giving them the conceptual understanding that they can apply their knowledge where they are at the time, using that context of thinking that the word problems, giving them something that appeals to them. And this is why. Look at this. This is why. So when I start thinking about like, why is it that I keep doing this? This is why. Historically, and I want to come onto a master class sometime and say, you know what, historically, it says that our kids, our economically disadvantaged kids, are not making the grade. Historically, and it's been like that for years and years. I want to come on and say, you know what, at this campus right here, at this district right here, we are making a difference. And guess what? When you look at this data, because we have worked together, when you look at this data, all of the kids are about the same area. They're in the same spot. That means they're growing together and we aren't leaving anybody behind. That's why we have to keep doing this. And that's why I know that the people who are watching this, I know y'all are math peeps like I am, and y'all get passionate about this because you know the opportunities that open up for our kids when they are able to do the math. I was having a conversation with my son the other day. Now, this child, I've never been able to teach him math because he was taught math in school, and he had a lot of packets and a lot of worksheets and a lot of rote memorization things. So when he got home, he was like, I'm done. I don't want to learn any of this from you. I don't want to do this anymore. So it was hard for me to teach my own child. He's in college now, and he told me, I think a lot of my issue when I got into school, when I got into college, he had to take remedial classes. And he had to take remedial classes because he didn't get what he needed in school. So this is what he told me. He said, Mom, I could do the multiplication, the division, I could do all that. But then when you threw those words in there, I didn't know what to do. That tells me that my child, and yes, mine, that tells me that there is something that we have to change and help our kids to understand and know the whys behind the mathematics. We have to do it together. We have to make the change, because if we don't make the change, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten, and that's not okay. Okay, so here's your question. How will you use the strategies to make instruction more intentional and increase growth in your students? How will you use these strategies? Because if we're not, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. No more Band-Aids, y'all. This is an intentional plan. It takes the intentional plan plus the intentional actions, and that gives us intentional results, things that we can see. This is not going to be something that's fast, but using these strategies, you will see growth faster. You will see the confidence in your kids' eyes. You will see the aha moments from your kids, and they will start loving math because they start understanding it. and they can make connections. And I'm telling you, it gives you goosebumps when they start telling you and explaining why this makes sense to them. I'm telling you, it's beautiful. And I'm going to leave that just for a few minutes because of this lag that I am watching here. Okay. And here's my information. Again, I am Tony Hardy with Intentional Change, lead educational consultant. This is my love. This is what I love to do, working with teachers to grow our kids. And you know what? It's not easy work being an educator, but you know what? I think that together that we can make things happen for the kids, and it's going to be better for everybody.